Welcome to Paranormal Nightshift, your home for everything that goes bump in the dark, and the place where your stories come to life. Some believe in fate, others believe in guardian angels. But what if the line between the two is thinner than we think? Tonight's story is one that will make you question reality itself. A voice from nowhere, a force unseen, and a moment that should have ended in tragedy, but didn't. This is Sydney's story, the voice that saved me, a near-fatal encounter. But before we dive in, if you love spine-tingling tales like this, grab a free copy of The Birth of Dimensional Desperado, the first ebook in the Dimensional Desperado series, exclusively at paranormalnightshift.com. Don't miss your chance to uncover the supernatural secrets waiting within its pages. Now, dim the lights, and let's get started with tonight's story. 3 years ago, my life nearly ended in a heartbeat. It was a typical evening, or at least it started that way. I was driving home, the streets familiar, the city lights blurring past as I hummed to some forgettable tune on the radio. My thoughts were scattered, wandering between work stress and what I'd cook for dinner when I got home. I was exhausted, but relieved to head back to the comfort of my apartment finally. The intersection ahead loomed in the distance, lights flickering from green to yellow. I didn't think much of it. No cars in sight, just the steady hum of the engine beneath me and the rhythmic pulse of my tires against the pavement. And then, out of nowhere, a horn blared, loud, urgent, panicked. My heart jumped into my throat, my head snapped up, and in that split second, I saw them, headlights, bright, blinding, and coming straight at me. Time slowed to an agonizing crawl. I slammed my foot down to react, brake, and do something, but I couldn't. My foot wouldn't budge, like it was frozen in place, as if something was holding it down. I tried again, desperation clawing at me, my brain screaming at my body to move, to save itself, but I was trapped. And then I heard it. A voice. A calm and commanding woman's voice cuts through the chaos, like a beacon in the storm. "Away," she said. It wasn't loud. It wasn't frantic. It was knowing, as if whoever or whatever was speaking understood exactly what was about to happen and what I needed to do. It wasn't a suggestion, it was an order. And then, something even stranger happened. I felt it. This force, something I still can't explain, gripped me, pulling me away from the direct line of impact. Not physically, but my entire being. Something tugged me from within, shifting me just enough to avoid the full brunt of what was coming. The driver, later, I'd learned they were impaired beyond reason, blew through the red light at full speed. The impact was brutal. My car was the first one hit, and the world around me shattered in a sickening symphony of crunching metal and screeching tires. The force of the collision sent me spinning. My body whipped forward, the seatbelt digging into my chest as glass rained like glittering daggers. My mind struggled to process what was happening. The sounds were deafening, a chaotic orchestra of destruction, horns blaring, people screaming, and the distant wail of approaching sirens. Then silence. Pain crept in slowly, gnawing at my limbs as I struggled to move. My chest heaved with ragged breaths, my vision swimming in and out of focus. Panic set in when I tried to shift and realized I couldn't. My leg was trapped beneath the crushed steering column. Terror gripped me, my hands trembling as I tried to pull free, but the weight of the wreckage was unforgiving. I could feel my heartbeat hammering in my ears, and for a moment I thought, this is it. Then the voice came again. "Breathe. Call your mom." It was so soothing, so specific, so... there. I obeyed without hesitation, my shaking fingers fumbling for my phone as tears blurred my vision. Somehow I dialed the number. I broke down when I heard my mum's voice on the other end. I could barely string words together, but I clung to the invisible presence I felt beside me, comforting me. I don't remember what I said, but my mom's frantic voice only grounded me in reality. And yet, through it all, I felt her, the unseen woman, her voice steady and reassuring, wrapping around me like an invisible shield. Then she spoke again. "Remain calm. Pull your leg to the side." It should have been impossible. The space was too tight, the pain too sharp. But something inside me, something driven by that voice, trusted her. I twisted my body, maneuvering my leg in a way I wouldn't have thought possible. And somehow, it slipped free. I stumbled out of the wreckage, collapsing onto the pavement, gasping for air. The cool night air hit my face like a slap, and I looked around in a daze. Bystanders rushed over, their faces a blur of shock and concern. Someone helped me to my feet, but I barely registered them. My eyes were fixed on my mangled car, the shattered glass, the flashing lights approaching in the distance. I should have been dead. When my mom arrived, tears in her eyes and arms wrapped me in the tightest hug imaginable. I was still in shock. As I stood there, trembling in her embrace, I replayed everything in my head, the blaring horn, the frozen foot, and the voice. It wasn't until much later, long after the dust had settled and the nightmares had begun to fade, that I realized how impossible it was. The more I thought about it, the more it didn't make sense. The horn, did anyone honk it? The voice, where did it come from? And the feeling of being pulled. How? Whoever she was, whatever she was, she saved my life. Even now, 3 years later, I still hear her voice sometimes in the quiet moments when I'm alone. It's not as loud, not as clear, but it lingers, like she's still there, watching over me, waiting in the shadows should I ever need her again. I don't know who she is, a guardian angel, a ghost, a figment of my imagination, but I do know this: I should have died that night, and I didn't, and for that, I owe her everything. With that being said, Sydney, thank you so much for sharing your story. Now, if you have a story you'd like to submit, you can do so right here on Paranormal Nightshift. And hey, if you enjoyed this episode and want to support the show, consider joining us on Patreon. You'll get an ad-free experience, early access to new episodes a week before everyone else, and full access to all future journeys of the Dimensional Desperado ebook series. Not ready to subscribe? No worries. You can still support us by following the podcast on Spotify and YouTube. And while you're there, drop a comment and let us know what you thought about this episode. And don't forget, head over to paranormalnightshift.com to grab your free copy of The Birth of Dimensional Desperado, the first book in the series. That's all for now. Stay curious, stay skeptical, and we'll see you next time on Paranormal Nightshift.